on the sort of character spectrum, Rex, I'm not sure you could find guys at more disparate poles than Alejandro Tosti and his fiery demeanor on the golf course, and the stoic one, the world number one, Scottie Scheffler, who tied for second, I believe, for the third straight year at the Houston Open. Shot 62 on Friday, shot 63 on Sunday. Scottie, Rory, both in the field. What were sort of your biggest takeaways as it related to those two players?
I'll start with Rory because I think if you're looking at it from 30,000 feet, and I don't want to make this sound like a warm up for the Masters, but in those two, in their
It was a
mind,
warm up for the
it was
Masters.
a warm up for the Masters. I'm not taking anything away from the Houston Open, but let's be honest and call this what it is. And if you're Rory, I'll start with him because that's the easiest. Fourth in strokes gained tee to green, top 10 and driving distance. The things that he didn't seem to quite have, even in victory at TPC Sawgrass, seemed to come together. And again, you just pointed out, you had to work really hard to miss fairways on this particular golf course. However, I think what he saw out of his game was probably very encouraging. And I think once he got on scoring runs, which we all know that's how you get things done at Augusta. You go on a scoring run and suddenly you have 4 straight threes on the card and you know you're doing something special. And we've seen it out of him before. And I am curious because this goes to the idea we sort of talked about last week when we were co-hosting Golf Today, that Scottie Scheffler is still the favorite. But in my mind, I continue to trend towards Rory, and not necessarily because of what he did this week, just because of where he is in his game. I think for Scottie, it was one of those incremental gains. I guess the one thing that I will say about Scottie's game, and I think this coalesced on Saturday when he needed a quote unquote moving day, to use the cliche, when he needed to do something special, and he had done something special the day before with a 62. I think he shot 1 under par, shot 69. The scoring average on that day was 68. So he didn't even keep up with the average for the field, which is surprising out of Scottie. And I keep going back to, I think we both keep going back to the idea that that hand injury set him back in his offseason. And he is a creature of habit. We know exactly what he wants to do. He shows up at the golf course with a game plan and he sticks to it. I think he was probably held back further than maybe anybody anticipated, maybe even himself he anticipated. And I made this comment last week on Golf Today because we threw up a graphic between some key stats between last year and this year's. And the difference is minute. It's being second in putting versus 12th in putting this year. I mean, we're talking about fractions at this point. We're talking about a quarter of a stroke per round, but those things add up. And I think that's the difference why he is now 6 events into his season and still hasn't won.
So I think overall, both players got what they wanted out of their final tune-up at the Houston Open. You started with Rory. I would start with Rory as well. He made a slight driver adjustment after the third round, knocked down some loft. He said it was getting too spinny. Seemed to drive the ball much better in the final round. That's something to look forward to. And I think Rory said it himself that he still knows what he has to work on. You know, he has not been lights out these last 3 weeks on the PGA Tour. Didn't drive it particularly well at Bay Hill or hit his irons. He was sort of scratchy still at the Players' Championship, which I know is ridiculous to say, the strongest field of the PGA Tour season, and won that golf tournament. I think he did so a lot on the strength of great short game, great putting, and sound course management. And then, you know, he was not obviously top, full flight as well at the Houston Open. He said Michael Bann, his longtime swing coach, is coming into South Florida on Monday. They're going to get to work. His putting and short game continue to be very good. I thought, like, anecdotally, the stats didn't necessarily bear it out. I thought, like, he hit some fantastic short game shots that are going to portend very well for Augusta National with the very undulating greens, a lot of slope, some of the false fronts, the tightly mown areas. I thought that was very encouraging, as well as fourth in stroke gain tee to green. One thing, though, Rex, like, it popped up in the interview with Curie. He said, my right elbow has been bothering me. He said, I'm going to get a little bit of treatment on that, and we'll go from there. Like, oh, what can we follow up? When, how, what swings with the Masters on deck? That was certainly notable for me. As it relates to Scottie, I thought this was very encouraging as well. He putted great 3 of the 4 rounds. He was first in the field in proximity to the hole. He made only 2 bogeys all week. What I noticed off the tee, and we just talked about how Minwoo Lee was bombing it everywhere, Rex. Scottie seemed to be like purposely laying back some off the tee to prioritize accuracy. He was only 42nd in the field in distance. His ball speed was somewhere around 175. Mark Rolfe did a great breakdown on one of the Golf Central pre-games about how Scottie's footwork, wasn't as active as it has been in the past. I would have loved to ask him, was this by design, even though you're on a golf course where you can blow it anywhere? It goes against sort of his nature to be looking ahead to the Masters. So I wonder if it's that, or I wonder if maybe he just doesn't completely feel 100% with his game. He's still, like Rory says, he's got some work to do as well.
No, and I think that's a good conversation to have about Scotty, because he clearly is at the point now where he is probably going to search a little bit, knowing that he's now in the major championship season, that the warm up is over. I need to probably sort of start locking in that I think there was a degree of grace that he'd given himself because of what he went through during the offseason. And I keep going back to the idea that maybe the hand injury was a little bit more intrusive than we gave it credit for. Maybe because he was dismissive about it. He made it sound like, yes, it was a bad cut. I had to get stitches, but once the stitches were out, I was able to start. I think there was probably something there that set him back a little bit more than we anticipated.